Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Steven here with TB Fork, and this is day 18 of the 80 Days to Your Dream Body course. Today's protein source is going to be beef liver, and today is a legs and abs training routine. And the theme for today's workout is CRAC PNF stretching. So right now, I'm going to be demonstrating how to perform CRAC PNF stretching. Now let's get started. And while we were resting, let's continue with our crack PNF demonstration. Once we have done the posterior fibers of the hip, the abductors and the adductors next, what we can do is a little bit of circumduction just to mobilize the hip a little bit more. Again, circumduction is going to be terrific to help improve the production of synovial fluid in the joint capsule. By increasing the synovial fluid, that is the fluid that lubricates the joint. So it's going to reduce friction and it'll help with any impingements in the hip. For a lot of people, when you take them into certain positions, they're going to get a little bit of pinching. So doing some circumduction is going to be terrific to help lubricate the joint and get rid of any of those impingements. And with the circumduction, again, a couple different options. What I like to do is just place the Achilles on my shoulder, and then I will do some clockwise directions. And then after a few repetitions, I will switch and go to counterclockwise. If you prefer, what you can do is just use your hands. So you can take one hand at the distal femur, one hand at the calcaneus, do some clockwise circles. After a few repetitions, you would do some counterclockwise circles. And then if we want to get a little bit more fancy and a little bit more creative, we could also do some figure eights. So for the figure eights, again, we go into medial rotation and adduction, cross the midline. Then we go up. At the top of the eight, we start going into lateral rotation and abduction. We want to maintain that lateral rotation as we cross. And then as we get to the bottom of the eight, we're going to start going into medial rotation and abduction by bringing the leg out. Then we're going to maintain that medial rotation and go into adduction. And we're just going to repeat that and just make a figure eight. And we really want to scour the hip. So you really want to feel the edge of the hip as we are performing this. We could also perform it with the other hand positioning. So one hand at the distal femur, one hand at the calcaneus, and then we would go into medial rotation and adduction, scour that hip and really trace the hip. Once we get to the top of the eight, we're going to transition to a lateral rotation and abduction. We're going to maintain the lateral rotation as we cross the eight. At the bottom of the eight, we're going to start to transition into medial rotation and abduction. And then we're going to maintain the medial rotation as we get to the top of the eight. And that is how we would perform the figure eight circumduction. With regard to the circumduction, a few things that we would want to note is with regard not only the circumduction, but also with regard to the CRAC PNF stretching, is depending on the goal of the patient or the client, that's going to dictate a few things like the intensity, the duration, the frequency, the speed. When we are performing this, let's say on a professional athlete prior to an event, we want to upregulate the nervous system. And in order to do that, the motions are going to be a lot faster. So the circumduction is going to be quicker with regard to the contractions. The contractions are going to be harder and quicker. We're going to be holding them in the stretch for shorter periods of time. And then if we wanted to do it after, and also there's going to be less frequent attempts when we're doing that. If we wanted to perform this after an event, we want to down-regulate the nervous system. So what we would do in that case is the contractions, they are going to hold the contraction for longer. In the stretch position, we're going to hold the stretches for longer. And also, we're going to perform more attempts for each of the stretches. That is if we want to calm the nervous system and down-regulate the nervous system. But our rest period is up. Time for the seventh and final set. That was just a tiny taste of what can be found in my members only section. If you enjoyed it, become a member for only $5 a month to get access to hundreds of member only videos.